truth. Try to kill me now! Huh? Gum! Jack!
What's up, everyone? Kane here, Captain of the Day's Pirates, coming at you with our first matchup guide for the OP09 meta, talking about Marshall.D.Teach, how we're going to take down Blackbeard as RP Luffy. So appreciate you tuning in. I hope this is going to be a very kind of informational video, one that you can reference back to as you learn the matchup from your perspective and maybe even tweak the deck in the way that you want to as well. So we're going to start off by going right into a Blackbeard deck list that has won a big tournament over in Japan. Might be one that you see someone just, kind of play with immediately. Talk about some of the tech choices that they might have available to them. Then also kind of circle back to what that means for our deck list and potential tech choices that we can make from our perspective. And then I have a decent amount of content for you as well as around mulligans, your curve going first versus second, and then after that curve up to 10, how are we finding that final punch? How are we finishing it off? And then I'll wrap up with two pretty good gameplay videos with some examples for y'all there. So great stuff overall.
And here, for those that are not aware yet, Marshall.D.Teach does have the effect that they have no on-play abilities. Their own on-plays do not activate. And then activate main once per turn. They can trash a card from their hand until the end of our next turn, your opponent's next turn, their on-plays do not activate. So a very Staxy type of effect, limiting what your deck can do on your turn and playing around you in that way. So overall, this deck, especially this main deck that you might see some people starting out with, is very straightforward, very Blackbeard centric. So this entire engine's kind of built around the fact that they already have 3 searchers coming out the gate. Lafitte is a 1 cost, 1k, rest 1 Don and rest this character to search top 5. Hachinoso is a Germa 6 style effect, stage rather. So you rest it, trash 1 card from your hand, look at top 3 for Blackbeard Pirates. And then This Is My Age is an event that is very much like a brand new. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Blackbeard, put the other 2 in your trash, so it feeds your trash as well for other effects. Through this core, they kind of have a couple 2Ks available to them. Stronger is a minus effect that allows them to kind of cycle a card. That is also a 2K. Shiraya is also a cycling style effect that is a 2K. Some decks play another 2K or 2, but generally speaking, they're not very high on 2Ks. That is something to keep in mind. That's one reason that I do feel like RP is fairly good into them is our leader swing inherently taking a 2K from them strains them more than some other decks that we might face. Then from there, a couple other kind of pieces to talk about. We're going to talk about some of these from the gameplay perspective pretty in depth. They have 2 kind of mid-game minus effects. Laboon is used amazingly in this deck. It's a 4 cost 5k. Rest it to give your opponent's character minus 4k, or minus 4 cost rather. Van Augur is a Blackbeard locked 5 cost 6k. Rest it to give minus 3. And on KO, it draws a card. That is something that we very much need to be conscious of as we're playing against them. Dot Q is also their kind of early mid-game, potentially repeatable removal. It removes a 1 cost or lower by resting it. Again, it does draw a card on KO. So one of the gameplay things that I'll talk about on the curve is how and when you want to attack into these characters and what to think about from those decision paths. But attacking into these improperly can really cost you the game for just from a natural card advantage perspective. Vasco Shot is a Blackbeard Pirate searchable 2 cost 2k blocker. Sometimes they'll just drop a couple of these in the late game and see if you can deal with it. Some decks don't run this at all. It's kind of one of the more the Blackbeard focused deck. Then beyond that, they do have 2 removal events. This Liberation removes the character's effect, and then if they're 4 cost or less, KO it. So that's very good. It's a way that they can answer Zoro on curve, so this is something to keep in mind. And then Finger Pistol also is just that straight up trash 2 cards, KO, a 5 cost or less. Then these last two are kind of the threats of the deck that Realistically, they need to see these to beat us, in my opinion. Jesus Burgess is one of the best cards in the deck. It cannot be KO'd by your opponent's effects. And then also, it is a 4 cost 5k with a 1k counter that gets a 1000 power for every 4 cards in your trash. Think about how many cards that we've already talked about fill the trash. Uh, the cards that you're going to put in trash naturally, your leader effect trashes a card. Like, there's so much to it. This can be up their curve. They can just play 2 of these in the same turn, and sometimes it's just like, oh, 2 9k bodies were developed this turn, and now I have to deal with it. And then the big scary blocker, I cannot believe this is a 10 cost 10k, a 12k blocker. But again, we can get past it. Basically has an on-play effect. You can only activate it the turn that you play it, but it negates our leader effect for the turn, which doesn't really matter for us. Then it also negates one of our character's effects and prevents them attacking for the next turn. So it's all the way through our next turn that either the characters just can't attack at all, has no text, so if it's a blocker, it turns off one of our blockers for a turn. Very dynamic problem overall. But it is their entire turn, right? And it is a blocker, but the card economy that we have to play in the late game, we can push past it in a lot of ways. So this is kind of the standard core. You'll always see a configuration of some of these cards in here. What I do have to kind of mention here is some additional cards or packages that might be ran. Like I know my friend Teddy Kiss My Anthe are in the Discord. Oh, also if you're not in the Discord, I'll put a link below. Talking about all sorts of different deck lists and strategies. Obviously, my RP Luffy content will be here in the long run. But yeah, so some decks are kind of playing a Mancherry option or a kind of recursion engine. She is a 1 cost 0k, 1 Don, activate main, Restless, and 1 Don, and return a 3 to 5 cost black character to your hand. So just a recursion piece that allows you to kind of grind through the late game and pick up 2Ks or other cards. Usually within that deck list, they'll playing a couple more 2Ks. They'll play this Bartolomeo over maybe the Vasco shot. So it's a 2K instead of a 1K, and it might not be searchable, but if you do put it in your trash, you are able to pick it up with Mancherry, which can be very, very good. Jack, I'm surprised that more decks aren't playing this. I think a few people have mentioned it. It's just such a strong, sticky body that's a pain for us to answer. I think our opponent being on Jack is worse for RP Luffy, but a lot of them aren't on it, so that's kind of a good thing for us to some degree. This Katarina Devon, I think, is a very flexible Blackbeard card that just isn't seeing play. Maybe it's just worse than I think it is, but the fact that it gains blocker, banish, or double attack, it's very flexible. And then also, fun fact with this, because it's a gained ability, it's not inherent to her as a card. If you're in the mirror match and a Blackbeard tries to negate Katarina's effect, it does not take away blocker, which is a very interesting ruling. Ice Age, give up to -1, -5. We know that we don't love this card, but a lot of them aren't on it, so good for us, I guess. Tempest Kick, similarly, this allows them to cycle a card and get -3. I don't see this on as many as I would expect it to. The only other thing that I realize is not on here is Black Kaido, and I think with Tempest Kick, they're probably playing a Kaido or two as well. So you may activate main once per turn, discard 1 card from your hand. It's basically an on play, so you can only do it the first turn. KO, actually, it's a trash, right? Yeah, it trashes a 7 cost or lower character. Then it trashes a card from their hand. So in the mirror matchup as well, Tempest Kick Kaido killing a opponent to Blackbeard, massive. So that's kind of the things to keep in mind. I'm going to talk more about the play patterns kind of in the next couple slides. What I am going to pull up, though, is my kind of current deck list and where we can mention a couple tech options if you're particularly wanting to play into a lot of Blackbeards or you're expecting a lot of Blackbeards. So overall, I'm not going to go through an entire deck tech here today. If you want to see an 09 deck tech soon, I can kind of make a more formal one. I am going to kind of build it into the Trail to Laugh Tale video, so check those out if you haven't yet. But overall, from my deck list, if I was going to say like, hey, I'm expecting to play like, if I win the Treasure Cup tomorrow and I think I'm going to play against 4 Blackbeards, what I would probably do is I'd probably get some dragons in here. It is just a straight up 8 cost 9k rush, even if you don't have an on play. And if you do have the on play, even better, right? But what I would probably do if we're directly expecting a lot of Blackbeards. I'd probably actually drop this front of Soke and probably one Yasa. Go 2 of those. And honestly, that maybe be it. Sanji could also be flexed into like Onami or something else if you want a couple more blockers or a couple 2Ks. That could be an opportunity. But Dragon is huge. And then obviously, a lot of people are loving Shanks. I personally have not yet. I'm going to continue to give it more reps. But if I'm getting into tomorrow's Treasure Cup, I'm sleeving up 0 Shanks personally. But if you do get up to 10 Don and slam it down, it is a massive threat. But at the end of the day, the way I view it is every turn after 10 Don, Roger's just going to win you games that Shanks never will. That's a fact, not an opinion. Uh, and I continue to show that in some of the games that I find and experience. So I definitely stand by that pretty firmly currently. But if you have Shanks and you do want to play Shanks, you don't have Rogers yet, especially a couple Shanks who does the trick. Especially if you don't have Rogers yet, but you did pull Shanks, I would put those in. But all right, so that's kind of the deck list. Where I do want to go from here is into deciding whether or not we want to go first or second. So at the end of the day, it is we are obviously an aggressive deck, but I think in this matchup we do want to go second. Almost always in most matchups we do want to go first. It gives us a dominating curve. There's a couple of reasons why. You can see them here, right? Blackbeard does have a couple different ways to answer Zoro on curve. So we don't like that. If we play Zoro, no other ramp on turn 3, it can get a little sticky. Even with my deck having a lot more consistency, going second just kind of gives you that flexibility. Because they generally can't black hole you turn 2, that Zoro on turn 2 is going to almost always, or I'm sorry, the Mr. 2 on turn 2 is almost always going to have their on play available to them. If they are going that aggressive to black hole you on turn 2, you're probably going to be able to grind them out the later turns pretty effectively. And then also it just makes their 10 cost Blackbeard come down 1 turn later while we're, exerting our pressure and having that additional card, where obviously they're very they're very hungry for cards in hand as a deck and a mechanic. So I'm going to cut here and insert some Mulligan thought process for going first and for going second. It's going to go going first, then we're going to go into kind of the curve and thought process through a slide, and then same thing with going second. So cut right over to that. We have lost the die roll, and we are going first. I'm pretty certain, or I think a lot of Blackbeards are electing to go second. And I do think, in general, you want to take that as mentioned previously. So I'm going to run through just like 5 Mulligan situations going first. So let's go ahead and cut it up. Top end heavy. Actually, I think I would keep this. The Gear 5 might not do a whole lot for us. But turn 1, we're obviously going to get to search. If we get a Zoro, best case. If not, we get some other counter or threat. And then usually, I mean, not always, but usually they're not going straight into turn 3 black hole. So if you don't hit the Zoro, there's still a pretty good chance you'll get to ramp with the Bon Clay. So just kind of real quick, if I kept that would be bottom life. First life would be a Gum Gum Giant. We'd go first. Search. I guess I would just grab a 2K in this scenario, the blocker. Next turn we draw. Get to play another Nami. At this point, we're probably not going to grab a Zoro. And yeah, just a Usohachi. And then probably turn 3, we're Bon Clay. And then we're going into, our top end and curving out. Relatively speaking here, with the amount of 2Ks we have and the pressure that a Blackbeard's going to put on us, we might just be able to play a vanilla 12K at the top of our curve if we don't hit anything else. I guess I may have searched past that if that was what I played, but that's a pretty good keep. Strong play. When we do get to get 3 Namis early, obviously gives us a lot of card selection. It's another one of the reasons why I do value, 9 cost Luffy and Sanji, because it does just allow us to play a curve. Get a good shuffle. Okay, so we're gonna go through about 5 hands. So again, going first. I'd snap keep that. Again, even if we're denied our ramp, we get to just play vanilla curve. Our last life is gear 5. And yeah, turn 1 we're searching. Grab, I guess, just a Sanji because we didn't hit anything else. Then draw. Yeah, we're just playing through here. Even if they turned off our on plays, we're just playing through the big bodies and going with that. So another pretty easy keep there. One thing that I'll probably emphasize a little bit more with the going second curve, but at a competitive level, technically, the person going first is supposed to declare whether they're going to mulligan or not first. So kind of keeping that in mind as far as how confidently you keep and whether or not you do say it first or not. This hand, I don't think I'm keeping. If I have the opportunity to mulligan this one, I do think I'd just send it back. We could maybe hit our Zoro turn 1, but then we're not hitting any threat immediately. We hit that, we bottom 2 threats. I guess we do get to ramp into a new gate. Probably turns out fine. But if they're doing, a strong curve and we kind of miss on the threats, I would probably send that back. So let's just say I mulliganed that. Oof. Guess we should have kept that one, eh? Playing through this. We do get the ramp, and then again, maybe we do just protect ourselves well enough to play a vanilla 12K and plan on trashing that gear 5 off of a queen or a giant. But yeah, that one could be a little dicey, depending on how it played out. Maybe fine. All right, let's do one more real quick and wrap this up. Overall, I think this deck becomes, the mulligans become a lot easier in this meta, not in this meta per se, but in this deck configuration. It never looks horrible, and that's really what we want to be from a consistency standpoint if we're going to run through, 10 rounds. This one, yeah, we mulligan that. 3 big bodies, no ramp. Not a little bit of counter, but not early counter that we need. Going first, that is not enough pressure. So our last mulligan, we have to keep this hand and see what happens. That's a pretty good one going first. Bond Clay on turn 3, last life Roger, you love to see. In this case too, I would definitely go, turn 1, nothing, turn 2, draw, turn 3, Bond Clay, then turn 4. Beckman's probably going to be turned off. If you've taken a hit, depending on what pressure they're putting on you, you may be able to do that. But yeah, either way, developing that threat and then going into maybe a blocker and some pressure. Kind of depends on their curve there. We may not have been in the strongest space with kind of the draw there. So that would definitely depend on how they played out. If they had a strong Burgess curve, that may have not been the best play out, but it was a good enough curve to kind of keep it, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that's going first. All right, we're back. So we talked about mulligans and kind of what some of those kind of hands might look like that we want to keep versus mulligan. To kind of talk a little bit more about the curve and how we want to play into them. Turns 1 and 2, obviously Nami and Zorojuro, kind of stock and standard. Prioritizing KOing Lafitte. Do not let them get additional resources off of Lafitte early. Where this kind of falls off is once they are going into their 10 down turn, unless I have a Nami on board, which maybe I do. If I have one, then I will. But unless it's a Nami, I'm not swinging into Lafitte anymore. At that point, when they go to 10 down, if they activate Lafitte, they are not playing a 10 cost Blackbeard, and that's basically a net win for us, in my personal opinion. Maybe they find the Blackbeard for next turn, whatever. But if they are doing that, they are not playing a Blackbeard on that turn, and we're able to drive our lead even further forward because we'll probably beat them to 10 down. After we go into our kind of turn 3 plays, swinging with Zorojuro, assuming it lives. Even if they begin turning off on plays at this point, I'm still playing my Yasups. I'm still playing my Mr. Twos. Um, Ideally, obviously, if they do KO Zoro, Mr. Two with on play on is great. But I'm still playing my Yasup or Mr. Two either way to continue to develop that threat and require resources from them. Turn 4, we're going into, 7 down if we didn't get ramp. In this case, maybe we're playing out, just a kid or a Sanji or a Beckman. This is where, depending on the person, and I've seen this go a couple different ways, they might not feel comfortable really like preventing your on plays already. And if you go into 7 down on turn, or so if you're going into like your 7 down or 9 down turn and they give you an on play, I guess generally speaking, they shouldn't once you're getting to your 9 down in this case going first. But either way, if you get an opportunity to kill a Burgess, whether it's like a Beckman trashing or they swing with it as like a 7K swing, I would prioritize getting into that. Once it gets bigger, it gets a little trickier as far as how you prioritize that. Um, but that's just what I'd say is like if they give you an early opportunity to KO that Burgess or not KO, trash, or knock it out in combat, I would absolutely do so. And then also, as I kind of brushed over this from turn 3, if they play a Laboon, always prioritize swinging into Laboon. I like to swing 7K into Laboon. You have to give me 2 cards, or this whale dies. Fortunately, I love Laboon, but it has to happen. So that's the way I prioritize that. Where this kind of mid game can get a little bit punishing, and where you may lose the game in a way that you might not immediately realize that this is the mistake you made, but can absolutely lose you a game down the stretch against a Blackbeard, is how you go about swinging into those the dot Qs and the Van Augers. So I, generally speaking, am not really swinging into Van Augers like ever. Again, unless I have a stray Nami, but if I have a Nami, they probably KO'd it with Van Auger. But I might. But basically, any swing that's a 5K or could go into lead and goes into dot Q is just not good for us. It gives them a free card, and we lose that kind of threat that could have been had, which we do need. If it's a Van Auger, the fact that that's a 6K changes the conversation a little bit. That's something that can swing into you every turn while playing a Blackbeard. And then you get real sticky about when you swing into that and the cards that they get off of it. So that's one where the decision path I still haven't really fully built out. But generally speaking, I'm not going to want to swing into them with 6K or even really 7K because they can counter out with 1 card or they can gain their card back. I guess that's what I would say is like if you do just have a 6K body and you can check that, could be an option. But I really don't like investing Don into it. And I also don't really want them to have that card a lot of times. I think the priority gets a little bit sticky if you invest the Dom to go 6 card, like to get 2 cards out of them, and then they just draw a card instead. You've kind of delayed yourself. So I guess that's where I'd prioritize a little bit more is swinging into it where it's a 1-for-1 card. You didn't invest any Don, and if they counter out of it, then okay, it's like they protected their life. It's still a little rough because they're so low on 2Ks. That 6K into their face could have offered a lot bigger threat, right? Because they only have so many 2Ks, but you give them the opportunity to 1K. So like I hope that somewhat made sense, but the Van Augers become kind of the harder decision path where you need to think about the implications of them getting cards or kind of what that would look like for you. But now we're going to kind of pivot into going second, and I'll cut to kind of some mulliganing for a second, and then that game or that slide. All right, now we're going second into Blackbeard. Again, probably go through 5 mulligans. Again, now that we're going second, kind of allowing our opponent to mulligan or not can also influence whether or not I would personally keep it. So let's see here. First hand, we won the die roll. We took second from them. We want to see Mr. Twos and then just threats. I think I would keep this. Going second, it's a little bit, we might not get Zoro Juro value, but if they use removal on it, and then we're able to develop a Yasup, it can be valuable. So yeah, I would keep this. Giant bottom life. That's good life. So going second, we draw, we Nami. No monster 2, but that's alright. I'd probably grab a 2K here, makes sense. Draw turn 2. We'd swing 7. Zoro. Probably counter out of whatever swings come early from them. Maybe they give us a 6. Draw. If Zoro's gone, basically either way we play Yasop, whether or not we get on plays or not. Again, usually turn 3 it's a little bit expensive for them to begin already turning off on plays, but if they are, that's fine. Just develop the 6K and, you know, go in appropriately, and then, you know, go from there. New get off the top's pretty good. So I think if my opponent mulliganed there, I may have considered mulliganing myself, but I think that was just a well-rounded enough hand that I think I would have just kept it. I think I would just keep this. Realistically, Queen is kind of a 7-down play for us that I don't mind. Again, even if they do turn off on plays. So I'll just keep that. Especially if they kept, I don't want to risk a brickier hand or something that's going to be worse for me. So going second, draw, nothing. They swing. Let's say they just swing 8 at us. I would take it probably. If they turned off on plays, it's a little bit annoying. If they do, then you just play out the Zoro, but usually they're not doing that on turn 2 already. So then you draw, and you would be able to go 6, here, here, see what we get. Oof, bottoming 2 giants does not feel great at this moment. I do, however, think I want a 10K body. And then we go to turn 3, we're at 7. Again, now if they've turned off on plays, depending how threatening you want to be, you could try and jam another Mr. 2 or just the blocker, and then you're going into big bodies from there. Might be, you probably grind out decent. If they hit some strong Burgesses there, might be a little bit of a sketchy curve out. It really makes a big difference how they play their early game, what early game they develop with like Van Augers and Doc Hughes. And we'll talk about some of those decisions elsewise too. I think that was only the second hand. Was it the first hand? I don't know. Again, I'd probably just keep this. Yet again, 2 and 3, it's a little bit expensive for them to begin turning off on plays already consistently against us. If they do, then it's fine. These are just good, valuable threats for the value that we get. But otherwise, and maybe even if they turn off on plays, your turn 3 being a Sanji might be valid. Because then you get to swing 7, leave this up, and then develop a blocker potentially. We draw Nami, Nami. So I think that would be pretty easy keep. Basically, if you see a 4-7 curve, you're just gonna like it. I think that's just the best way to put pressure on. It's again why I'm on currently 8 7 drops. I want to see that curve going second as consistently as possible. If I was on lower 7 drop counts, like even down to 6, I don't think I'm ever taking second. Like even if you're, because usually it's 4 kids and 2 Beckmans. None of that's searchable. And your curve is just very inconsistent at that point, unless you're also on Yasops, that kind of changes the math as well. But people cutting down on queens and not being on 7 drops makes second curve just not as good, in my opinion. Yet again though, turn 1 search, turn 2 Nami, that's a pretty easy keep. And that's where if they develop a Burgess and they let you trash it with Beckman, I don't think I've ever lost after that. I mean, they may prioritize that turn 3 turn off if they're thinking about Beckman, but that's such a strong play to be able to make. So yeah, I think that's kind of going second mulligans, and we'll kind of talk about going up the curve. All right, so we went through some mulligans, some hands that we might want to keep. Obviously, kind of based on that, we're looking to turn 2 Mr. 2. 7 drops are great, even if they don't have on plays. This is where I started to mention if they are not, if they don't hit you with that turn 3 on play denial, black hole effect. Beckman answering a um, Burgess on curve can absolutely swing the game in your favor in a major way, and they'll not want to do that in future games. With that, Kid, even if you don't have the on play immediately, they're not pressuring that hard that early. So if you develop the Kid, it's usually not really that big of a deal if they black hold you. And then that also allows you to go maybe into like a Roger and on 10 can just be phenomenal. Obviously, if they play a 10 cost Blackbeard, they could turn off the win condition. But it's also part of the reason why I'm on 2. It's just a massive threat. Sometimes the Gear 5, I'll just play it as a vanilla again, just here's a 12K, do something about it. Depending on kind of where that curve has been and if I'm ahead on Don to that style. At the end of the case, at the end of the day, the two things I mentioned kind of on the last page is always KO Laboon, always prioritize Laboon. Lafitte does fall off after 10 down. Once they're up to 10 down, it's not as concerning overall, but it's still something that you want to kind of address. Also, with this, kind of worth mentioning, I didn't mention this on the last slide, but if you do play out a Newgate, that on win attacking effect can be great into Vasco shots, as well as just getting rid of a Lafitte while you're pressuring them. So, that might come up in one of the gameplay videos that I have. But that's kind of the priority to that end, getting up to 10 Don. And again, the Beckman on 7, if they don't deny on plays, is chef's kiss. And then late game, we start to be able to kind of play through the board. So I'm going to kind of go into, now that we're at 10 down, what are we doing? Where are we going from there? So finally, the final punch. One thing I will say is that investing Don, well, first of all, 10 cost Blackbeard chains are good, but they're really not as bad as you think, especially if they aren't sitting with like a couple Burgesses alongside them. The Blackbeard chain really isn't that bad for us. We can play through it in a lot of ways. But then also just don't overextend your Don when you're swinging into them. Just that 6K swing, just the flat body. When they have a 12K blocker, every time you invest Don, they can just deny you that value for basically free, unless you have, one of the real big bodies. But even so, it's just very effective to use your Don to develop more bodies. One thing that don't forget about, Vanilla Queens are still great. Yasups are still decent as a 6K body. Kids are phenomenal at 10 down, even if you don't have an on play. So just making sure you continue to establish that board and just swing at them for a face value and say, what counter do you have and can you hang with me? I am on 2 Rogers. Roger does just flat out win the high rolls that you would win no other way. If they're going to try and go all in on you with Burgesses, and you can kind of start to see lines where it goes, oh, if I take this, they have only can swing at me for 12K, and there's no way I die to this because I have a giant and a 2K and whatever. And now I get to Roger next turn. I can take that hit and make them either, even if they don't extend it into me, I now have that Roger to win in a way that absolutely no other card would. And then at the end of the day, if we're going to lose the game and not really be shocked about it, it's going to be the scenario where maybe on 8 Don or 9 Don, they play 2 Burgesses and then they play Blackbeard after Blackbeard. It can get real sketchy. And then obviously, to some extent, if they get like a real good removal curve or they're playing a little bit more of that Jack style, kind of like Lucci, they could grind us out to that degree. But some of those losses you will have to accept, right? There's no matchup that's going to be 100%. But overall, I do feel like this is a matchup that we can absolutely dominate from our perspective. And I think it's really fun to play, I think. I mean, definitely more fun to play against than Lucci, in my personal opinion. But we will have a matchup guide for him as well on O9. But that's kind of the content that I have to this point, I guess you could say. What I'm going to do is cut over to 2 games that I played and kind of talk over those. And then that'll kind of wrap up the video. I would kind of be interested in going into like more extensive, like documentation around some of these decision paths and thought processes. But it would take me a lot of time. And I don't know, I'm kind of thinking if like maybe down the road, could that be a Patreon content type of thing if I'm going to spend that level of time and detail into documenting these things, like that type of logic tree, if that's something that would actually be valued to that point, or maybe you think it should be free or leave me alone. But if there is any thought on, a higher level of content that might be worth an additional investment. That is something that obviously, as the channel continues to grow, I would be very interested in doing as well. But I don't want to. I'm not going to just throw up 100 paywalls, right? I want to have the base content, the value, be omnipresent, ideally. So hopefully that made some sense. Hopefully, if you're not a subscriber, you want to subscribe now because we're going to have matchup guides coming out for like every deck that comes up against me, and continuing to game plan to that angle. So yeah, cut over to a couple games. All right, we're jumping into two games. They chose to go second here. I did Mulligan into this hand. Not the best opening, but it works. Early turns are going to be relatively boring here. Want that bottom bar drop off. Go. I can pop on some music. And so this early game, they are able to play out a couple of feats and develop a Burgess, which we know is, pretty what they're looking for in a lot of ways. To this end, we are going to swing into these Laffittes, but only until we really get closer to 10 down, like we kind of emphasized before. Then do that. Having the on play for Kid is great there. We're going to be able to go into Newgate with a Kid swing, which is phenomenal for us. Moving the Yas up, pretty big for them. Again, this is where I kind of do emphasize like the fact that they're approaching 10. I'm going to stop swinging into the feet, continue to pressure face. 9K leader is phenomenal for us. They're being very smart about defending their purchase overall. Start to rip away at their hand there. I like to see that. They do tend Newgates, or I'm sorry, Blackbeards do tend to emphasize locking down Kid over Newgate, which is fine with us. Trying to get some decent music here going in the background for you guys. So overall, we're just kind of following along with what I said, right? Now we have so much control over the board and their hand size that I feel nearly invincible, really, at this point. Um, Going 12 just kind of makes it inconvenient for the Blackbeard, right? He has to kind of choose what he's doing. And if he does take that and like counter out or something, I am able to just put more down on and swing into him with my leader if I really want to.
We all hate.
Now, at this point, they have no cards in hand, and basically looking at it and figuring that whether or not Roger just flat out wins here, which it does, just having one more attacker. Hypothetically, if this is a 2K, then we're in trouble. But actually, not even really so, because this has to go or be blocked. Block there. Now I'm kind of debating. Again, as long as that's not 2K, we're good. And GG. So pretty dominating win there. Sorry, I guess maybe I'll have to edit in something behind this. I'm trying to get this output to the right place here. Um, but again, these are just kind of examples to wrap up everything that we've been saying about the matchup. Uh, Here we're going first. They answer the kid or the Zora, which is one of the things we don't really like to see. And then we just swing because we don't have anything else to do. If we're really going to take two cards away from them or not. Hypothetically, having Nami to swing into a Lafitte would be valuable, but overall, not the largest concern here. Van augurs do tend to get sticky as to whether or not we want to swing into them. We do know that they have access to a dot queue, so hypothetically, any 4 costs aren't safe into them. I can't remember if I do swing into this Lafitte or not, um, but I probably shouldn't, in my opinion, at this point. We got the event there. But it also removed my thing. Counter out, staying healthy so we can grind out. We have no enclaves. I think at this point, yep, I don't swing into the Lafitte. That'd be very inefficient for me at this point in the game. And then we Newgate, even though it's just a vanilla 10k. Also does give us some flexibility to Vasco shots, hypothetically. Here ends the bag, another Newgate. Oh, we did get on plays this turn. Probably just still gonna block. Kind of no reason for them not to block. Another Newgate. They only get to turn off one of our new gates this turn. I'm sorry, another Blackbeard. They only get to turn off one of our white beards this turn. They gave us on plays again. Kind of surprising to me. Got a 2K, which we love to see. Pressure in 6. These decks are really low on 2Ks nowadays too, so our leader being able to pressure in this manner is just good for the entire dynamic. Easy block. I think I still end up going for a 9 cost. Yep. Get a second giant there. And just having another 10k is just so good, even though they just block it. There's new games. Love to see it. There's Blackbeard. How many times am I going to say that wrong? Swinging in now. You take it. Why not? Yeah, okay out of that. They're going to take away our on play. I think they already did. Now I think we do just put a little bit of down on. It is kind of nice if you can snipe a Lafitte with your Newgate just for sake of, if they try and convert a win, they may use Lafitte to search removal and then finish it off. Another kind of 2K requirement. And now I have Roger online, so for the rest of the game, their blockers are null and void if they realize that. Now we just swing big enough that they have to kill a 12k to block. Oh, they actually counter out with their entire hand. 1k is easy. 1K is easy. 15K. Take that because they can only do so much more. Yep, they can only do 15. Take it because why not? And now we got giants. Great grind through here. I was able to, I think I do end up just going for giant. All right, and get rid of the other cards so I have more Don to swing into the next turn. And big one. I thought it was just 2 games here. Let's see what ends up happening. Oh, we have another here. Oh, cool. So I must have just kept this recording the third. I didn't think it was only 2 games. Let's see if I do win this one as well. Very low on cards already. Not very, but kind of. I like going second yet again. It's gives us the card advantage. And this one usually comes down to 1 card or 2 cards in general. Here they are already filling their trash like crazy, which is a little nerve wracking. And then it will feed as well. I'm just kind of recording this quickly during my treasure cup, so mind if it's a little lower energy, just kind of locked in for the day. Yeah, they are absolutely flying through their deck though. This is a matchup where or a game where they start hitting double verges, we might get real sticky. Maybe this isn't even a win. Not trying to only showcase wins and not saying we're invincible into them. Let's see here. They're thinking pretty hard. I know they have at least one teach that I searched earlier. No, they will feed. This is where them going first to get more of the feed opportunities, right? And they're at 9 down. They could do it again next turn. Got a Burgess there. They probably developed that. Or Van Augur. Pretty solid. Luckily, Van Augur and Doc Q doesn't clear a queen. They need a Laboon. It's another reason why we prioritize KO on those Laboons so much. See, I don't want them to get one more draw off of that. And then just develop a solid kid. The fact that we didn't have an on play there, we might just be able to establish a gear 5 and leave a Don open, even though it's a bluff, which is pretty strong. Sanjay's probably and Beckman both are at quite a low, obviously, at this point in the matchup. Yep. 10Ks for 8 Don. Disgusting. But again, this is where we just established 12K because we can. So not even swinging into Van Augur because they can't swing with Van Augur and also Blackbeard. I'm surprised they didn't get Burgess and AA in this set, honestly. It's a pretty disgusting card. I raise the volume on this if it's not on track with the rest of the video, but just kind of staying focus. Vasco shot off Hachinoso, something to keep track of later. So that means they're probably not on Jacks and some of those other threats. I don't remember if I count out of this or not. Probably not, because I could do it again. Oh yeah, I do because it's an AK. Yep. I block. Yep. That was great, actually. I like that play a lot. And I'm assuming I end up developing these two bodies because Mr. 2 is just another 12K. Take that. Good. And we continue to bluff a radical beam. Not radical beam, giant. I block that. Makes sense. And then now we have two potential 12K swings if so they can only negate one, right? Actually, I'm kind of glad that this game was on here. I didn't realize that we had the three, but yeah, the Vanilla Gear 5 got there. Ends up being really big. I think I have to let that go. Instead, he was blocked for it again. I kind of just gotta let that go. I think the relative assumption is they're going to swing Burgess and then play another Blackbeard. I'll probably just take this one because why not? Roger, Roger. Love to see that. Why we play two? Another Blackbeard. Another Black Hole. It's a 12K body threat for me. Yeah, I said, do I swing up it? Yeah. Do they block? These repetitive 12Ks catch up to them pretty quick, huh? There's the Vasco shotgun that we know about. Oops, sorry. I'm just going to keep it rolling like that didn't happen. Sure. Yeah, just develop that threat. Oh, I did hold the Mr. 2, so we have two blockers now. And also this 2 6K checks back. Yeah, going down to no counter in hand made a little sketchy. But realistically, oh, I get to 1K out of Van Auger. That's different. Well, they trashed the third teach there. Interesting. You did dot Q. Now I have four potential 12K swings at me. Yeah, having this 1K for the Van Auger is definitely relevant. So I'm gonna take that. Matching that. Take that. Ooh. If he did have another Blackbeard, I'd be pretty in trouble because he could just freeze one of my blockers and hit me with two more 12Ks. So we're going to pretend I made that play because he already trashed another teach. And I knew that for sure. And so he just 5 into Bonclay. Yeah. And we stop another 12K swing. And I think I just Roger here. Yeah, Roger wins mathematically. That's why I think two Rogers are king. I think that does it. He has 5 12Ks on power floor. Hilarious. So yeah, that's the matchup guide, guys. If you guys have any other questions, hit me in the Discord. There'll be a link below. But yeah, we're eating Blackbeard's alive for this